something interesting is sure to happen. Well, I think you ought to tell me who you are first. Mr. Rabbit? Then why did you ask the question?
Goodness, this is quite extraordinary.
Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?
But today is turning into the most curious adventure I have ever had.
Welcome to the Alice in Wonderland podcast. I'm Georgia Ellis, and I want to remind everyone that this is a place for you to drop in and let your sense of wonder, imagination, and most importantly, curiosity loose. Today, I am joined by an extraordinary entrepreneur, speaker, and mountain athlete, Jeremy Jensen. So Jeremy is passionate about helping people lead authentic and intentional lives, rich with experiences that make them come alive. So let's get curious. Welcome, Jeremy.
Georgia, thank you so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Now it's evening over there and over there in the States. So thank you for dropping in your evening and taking some time to come and talk to me and our listeners as well. So Jeremy, I have a question that I ask all of my guests, and it goes along the theme of Alice in Wonderland, which is, what the podcast is named after. So I want you to imagine that I'm 7-year-old Alice wandering my way through Wonderland, and I bump into Jeremy. I bump into you and I say, Jeremy, who are you? What do you do in this world? What do you do in this Wonderland? How would you explain what you do to a 7-year-old girl?
That is such an amazing question, first and foremost. Yeah, I love putting myself in that scenario because I love that movie. I would say, Alice, that I am wafting and drifting along this planet to help people feel alive, to help them understand what it is that makes them fulfilled and brings them joy. I think there's a big shame in this world that too many people are living the lives on someone else's terms or living their life the way someone told them to live, as opposed to what's really true to themselves and what they value. And that is, I'm speaking from my own experience, and I think it's a shame, and I think it's one of the biggest travesties of our time. And I think the reality of it in the modern day world is that there's a lot of ways to escape the status quo. And I'm passionate and live and breathe and eat, helping myself and others follow what makes them feel alive.
Yeah. So it's really, I love that you say that, because I found myself, and I'm sure it's your story as well, I found myself living by somebody else's rules and what society wanted for me. And it's really touching to hear that you're going, we all have this opportunity to live a richer, more fulfilling life. So tell me, Jeremy, why do you do this? What made you decide that, hang on a minute, there's more to life? How can I show people how to do this? Was there a catalyst for you?
Mm-hmm. There was definitely an impetus. Well, first of all, the very simple answer is that it just makes me feel good. I started to do it, and people would seek my advice for whatever reason about career stuff. Actually, since I was a young man, people would seek my advice about certain things, and I think I just noticed I had a propensity for teaching and sort of advising, and I enjoyed doing it. So that really is some level part of the impetus or the catalyst. The other part is just that, again, I went through the trenches myself, right? I worked in went to graduate school, went to undergraduate school, was very much a wanderer for most of my 20s, traveling the world, and it was great. I don't regret any of it. I saw the whole world and wouldn't take it back, but I was very aimless. And I guess I felt like there was something left untapped, or that I had some potential to fulfill. And so I kind of just did what I thought I should do. And I went back to graduate school and studied business and got into the traditional corporate setting, and quickly realized, of course, that that wasn't quite what I wanted either. And so I really just went through it the hard way. I think that has been a blessing in disguise, because it's uniquely helped me be empathetic to others who have sort of on this very circuitous path of being stuck and confused, and perhaps like me, just consuming endless content about quote unquote making lives better, but not knowing how to do it, right? Like that, where does the rubber hit the road? That's the real challenge. And so I kind of, on some level, have figured that out a little bit, at least for myself. I would help advise other people on that now, and it's just incredibly fulfilling. So the short answer is that it was a pain point. Something that I struggled with for a very long time, and I'm just starting to scratch the surface on how to kind of figure this out. And that's where it all started.
Yeah. I want to dig a little deeper there. I actually met with somebody, had a meeting with somebody on the weekend just gone, and she asked me what it was that led me to leave a corporate world. So I'd been working in the corporate for 22 years. So all these rules and things that you've sort of spoken, you're probably going to speak about, but the same sort of thing, feeling I wasn't right, but there because of this rules. And she asked me, she goes, what was your defining moment? What was your pivotal point that made you leave? What was the aha moment that you knew that this wasn't right? Because this particular person knew she wanted to leave. She knew she wanted to do something else, but she was almost waiting to get her permission to say, well, what happened for you, Georgia? Do I need to wait for this, the clouds to open and an angel to come and tell me something? Or how do you know? So for you, what was the thing that you realized? So you're working in corporate. What happened for you to go, no, this isn't it?
I think for me, it was pretty clear. It was something like a visceral response. I just knew it wasn't. I knew there had to be more. I know that's maybe just like an oversimplification of it, maybe an answer or something that people out there are looking for. But I think you kind of know on some level, at least in my case, right? You don't feel, we could talk, we might get into concepts like flow and harnessing your strengths and feeling empowered and engaged at work. I think if those things aren't there, that's a sign. And I know I certainly was not feeling those things on a certainly a consistent basis. So that was really the first indicator for me. And knowing that, I felt like an entrepreneur at heart from as early as I can remember, and for better or for worse, always thinking I can do something better than my boss. And that has been a problem. But now I'm an entrepreneur, it's great because I've learned to, I'm all about letting the best idea rise to the top. I try and not be that difficult employee as a boss. I really want. But if I lead that discussion, if I lead that process, I can help facilitate the best idea and help people be engaged and be in flow states at work and that type of thing. So hopefully I'm not delusional, but I do think that it just is, it's sort of an innate sense. You either feel it, if you're not happy, if you're not feeling engaged, if you don't kind of on some level, it's a little cliche, roll out of bed and you're pretty pumped on your day, then it's probably a sign. Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Sometimes we think that because, like for me, because corporate life didn't work for me, doesn't mean it doesn't work for somebody else. I know that there are people out there who are kicking goals, loving it, jumping out of bed, want to get to work, and they're living that corporate life because that's the thing that ticks the boxes for them. But it may not be for everyone, but they're there because of the rules.
Right. Exactly. And the rules are very problematic. Don't like to color outside the lines, and it comes down to our underlying fears and narratives that we tell ourselves, that we're not good enough, that we might fail, that we might be rejected, that what will people think. Those types of mentalities, they keep us in bad situations, and it's biological, right? We don't want to do what's uncomfortable. That we've evolved that way, and in some cases that serves us. And if we're running from a saber-toothed tiger, we're fight or flight, that's really practical. But if we're not wanting to take risks because we feel like we might not be able to make next month's rent, or our boss will be mad at us, or our the workforce that we work with every day is going to judge us, those aren't so valid, and we need to probably reevaluate. But they're the same responses, right? So it's challenging.
Yeah. So what you were talking about there was the internal rule system that we make ourselves. Like, I'm not good enough, I could fail. Do you know, with the people you've worked with, is there a common set of external rules that we tend to, you're finding people are buying into that's just not really serving them? Anything societal or cultural that people are buying into? Are there common ones that are showing up?
Definitely, I certainly see it, and maybe it's cross-cultural. I would imagine it's universal. I imagine you can see a lot in Australia as well, the same concepts, but it's a lot of, my parents' expectations, or, familial or friend status quo, right? Like, what is my buddy doing? What did they go to school for? Well, maybe that's what I should go to school for. Or what job did they get? Or where are they at? This age thing too. This age thing is just ridiculous. And I believe me, I suffer from it too. But, where am I, quote unquote, supposed to be by the time I'm 38? Or, where was my brother when he was 38? Or, I think these families and friend structures, some of the best advice I ever got, which is ironic because this advice is about advice, right? Never take advice from someone you don't want to switch places with. And I violated that rule for many, many years, because I would look at the people who, frankly, I had no interest in being, but I would look at them as an example to compare myself to. And it led me down the wrong path for many, many years. And now I really stay true to that. I only want to look and emulate people and take advice from people who know exactly what I'm going through and what I want.
Yeah.
I think that's really valuable.
That is awesome. Can you just say that one more time for our listeners? Because I think that there is so much gold in that, because we tend to seek advice from people who, A, don't have our best interests at heart, and B, can't help us. They've never walked our path, and they're not walking the path we want to walk. So just say it again. It's beautiful.
Sure, yeah. So never accept advice from someone who you don't want to switch places with.
Oh, that gives me really good feeling and tingles all over. Thanks, Jeremy. That's gold. That's gold. That's going to be the heading of the podcast, more than likely. So thank you.
Good.
So I think there's also some other things around societal pressures to, you're not good enough unless you're earning a certain sort of money, or you're living in a certain size house, or whatever that might be. That then starts to put the pressure on us too, I believe. Is that something you're finding with people who are too scared to follow and live that rich, fulfilled life? But no, I can't, because that means I might not be able to keep my car, or I might have to, I can't afford my house if I'm going to go off and climb mountains, so to speak. Is that something that's popping up for people as well?
Definitely. I think that's one of the biggest drivers. It's kind of this status piece, right? Whether we want to call it that or not, because I know when I hear status, I think, oh, keeping up with the Joneses, or like having a Mercedes, or whatever that is. I don't know why I think that way, but it can be very simplified. It can be that simply, I don't know, they have that really cool purple coat I've been wanting for a long time. Like, how am I going to afford that if so yes, I see that all the time. And I think you just have to understand what you value, and again, it goes back to that same advice, right? Like, if if you catch yourself admiring someone with a purple coat and you find yourself being envious and you don't want to quit your job that makes you miserable because you can afford things like that purple coat, maybe you should evaluate if you even want the motherfucking purple coat.
Absolutely.
Don't you think that should be first and foremost? But we don't do that. No, that we do that as a society. We get caught up because there's these stories that are told us and we were supposed to like maintain the status quo, and we just don't think. That's the problem. A lot of us just drift through life and taught this stuff, and it's a shame. I mean, life design is not something that is required curriculum at high school and undergraduate institutions, as it should be.
Yeah.
We're not taught to be thoughtful about our life, shouldn't that be first and foremost?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to riff. I want to go down the path. Something you said there was, we just don't think. So what in your thoughts, how would you define somebody who thinks and somebody who doesn't think? Because everyone's going to sit there and go, yeah, I think. Yeah, I have thoughts all day. But the way you're saying it is, there's a different type of thinking around, do I want that purple coat or not? You know, that's different. So can you just sort of unpack those for us?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a great distinction. Thinking, obviously everyone thinks, but I think something that people don't do is think intentionally. Like, what do I want for myself? You ask people that, what do you want for yourself? Do you know how many people can't even answer what they want? That's just sad, I think. And and I've been there. I think we all have. Again, we're not trained to think that way. We haven't been asked these challenging questions. Instead, what we do, and increasingly more and more, is we just, I don't know. And then I turn on my smartphone and I get distracted and scroll through social media or turn on Netflix. We just don't ask ourselves. It goes back to that thing I was saying about being uncomfortable, right? We run away from it. We at all costs, we try not to be uncomfortable. And I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
We really need to ask ourselves and be really, really real with ourselves and do the hard work as to, what do I want? More importantly, why do I want it? And then the hardest part, but the most beautiful part, how am I going to get it?
Yeah.
Right? Those three things, Simon Sinek's golden circle, that's really, I mean, people don't go through that exercise, unfortunately.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm finding that with some of my clients as well. It's totally resonating with me in relation to, I have people who get stuck when we start looking at, you know, a goal or attention, something that they want to move towards. And a lot of people get really stuck on, well, what do I want? Because they've been conditioned to what they can have, and they still think inside that box.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I want a house. I want to be the best salesperson. Oh, I want a promotion. But as they start to unpack what they really want, they discover, I want to be an artist. I want to travel the world. And it starts to change when you take away those restrictions that we've bought into, when you start to really think and go, hang on, do I want that purple coat? No, because purple's not my color. And it's just that everyone else is wearing purple coats right now.
And that's the only reason I want it.
Yeah. And because it keeps showing up on my social media feed, this people in purple coats, and then the latest celebrities wearing a purple coat, and subliminally now I'm programmed to want a purple coat when I actually don't want or need a purple coat.
Precisely. Yeah.
So how do we stop that from happening, Jeremy? How do we sit back and realize that sometimes our wants, how do we determine our wants against that subliminal programming want that we think we want, but we don't?
Yeah, I mean, great question. That is the question, right? I think, you know, the first thing I would say is, again, to quote Simon Sinek again, starting with why. It's why do you want something, right? Again, you said, do I want to get that promotion, or do I want to, you know, get that car, or whatever it is? why do you want that? And to make sure that that's a good reason and that really resonates with what you actually value instead of what you think or been conditioned to value, is really important to start. And, I certainly, maybe a little out of the scope of this podcast, but I certainly take my people I work with through, weeks and weeks and weeks of content to uncover this. It's not easy. Don't beat yourself up about it. This is like really hard work, but it is so worth it. And I think really once you identify your why, it's just understanding how do you manifest that in the world. So for me, I know, my why is essentially, in a nutshell, is to help people follow what makes them feel alive, right? So like I said that at the top of the show. And the way I do that is through events, through travel, through a podcast, all these mediums, and some coaching and whatever else. And they're all different, and they all sort of achieve the same goal through different means. But at the end of the day, the process is essentially the same. And it's really just, one idea I want to mention is that people who are feeling stuck or scared or in a bad situation, right? Whatever that is, I think it's really, really, really important to acknowledge that we as human beings are the most adaptive species ever to exist, right? We're the ultimate adaptive machines. Darwin, I read this recently, and I have to talk about this because I'm so obsessed with the idea. Darwin didn't say survival of the fittest per se. And he didn't say the smartest or strongest. What he did say, though, is that we are the species most adaptive to change. We're the apex or pinnacle species precisely because of our ability to adapt to change. So those folks who are out there who are thinking that this is too hard or that they're stuck and that they could never change and they have a fixed mindset, please know that is not the case. You have at any point in your life, most, I should say, circumstances, you have the ability to change for the better, and you have the ability to turn things around and live a fulfilling, value-driven lifestyle. I really, really believe that. And I think biology, Darwin would argue the same.
Yeah. And I love that, because we forget how we can adapt. And, if there is something that you wanting to do that is outside your realm of knowledge, you have the ability to adapt yourself to be able to go after that. So you have the ability to get the skills. You have the ability to practice it until you feel comfortable in it. You have the ability to change your mindset. You have your ability to change your belief systems. We are so adaptive. And I love that you mentioned that, because a lot of people go, but I can't. This is who I am. This is who I'm always going to be. Oh, I'm not an entrepreneur, or I'm not a this, I'm not a that, but you can be.
Agreed, 100%. And the research backs it up. We're not just sitting here blowing air up your skirt. It's simply, that is research backed. Check out, for those of you interested in this topic, fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Carol Dweck, Stanford psychologist, she wrote a long, great book about it. Do yourself a favor, grab and adopt a growth mindset. If you find yourself fixed and that you are stuck with your current skill set and that you can't improve and that you can't change your situation, that is absolutely false. It is proven with a lot of research. So please check out that book to change your mindset.
Yeah, it is an awesome book. So for those that are listening, Carol Dweck is the author, and it's Mindset is the book, Mindset. So I want to sort of go off on another little path with you, Jeremy. So your mention about you're helping people to, really level up and to find their, I'm going to say bliss for want of a better term, but this life that a rich life, living a richness of life. So what do you see as being some of the ingredients of that for yourself and for your clients? So what are you noticing? Are there some common ingredients that people sort of put into themselves and adapt themselves to so they can have this richness of life?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, we've alluded to some of them. I think that one of the biggest things is just acknowledging where you're at, right? Like, again, if you're in a place where you're feeling stuck or confused, or this is just like over your head, but you want to get somewhere, you feeling happy, or you think there's some untapped potential like I was talking about, but you have no idea how to go about it. That I think is really important, just to start where you are. And the second thing is really coming to terms with your fears. This is, I think, the biggest piece for people on the front end. I sort of see the work I do as like in kind of 3 stages, and you could easily say why, what, how. I do a lot of work on the how recently. So once you get a handle of acknowledging where you're at, acknowledging your fears, truly confronting them. See, I'm in the adventure and action sports world, and coming from that world, I felt like my tolerance for fear was pretty high. Like I love hucking myself down mountains at pretty fast speeds and jumping out of planes, whatever that is. And so I did not acknowledge the fact that I was scared. And what I was scared of is failure, of trying and failing, of being rejected, of being not loved, of feeling like I wasn't good enough and being, turned away by my community, by people I didn't even know. I was worried about people out there I'd never even met, probably never will meet. And oh no, what will they think? Oh my God, what will I do? Coming to terms with those things and really, really battling those things is super important. And once you do, at least for me, and I've seen with other people, it completely opens up your mindset. And that's when a fire started to burn really deep in my belly. And my ambition and my vision and my motivation hasn't just gone through the roof since that point. Because before I wanted all those things, but I didn't acknowledge that I was too scared to go out and get them. And so once I did, that's where it really started to take off. And then the third piece I would say is just the how, right? Like, what are the habits? What are the productivity routines? How do you live your life on a day-to-day basis, right? One of my favorite quotes ever, Annie Dillard, she wrote a book called Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, still my favorite book to this day. If you like the natural world, prose, poetry, check it out. Annie Dillard, she said, how to get this right. How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives, right? And that's so true. So that getting this day-to-day routine down, consistent action over time, eats everything for breakfast. This is the stuff that I try and help people with, because that's the hardest. I think identifying your why, it's hard. It takes some internal work. Doing the what, saying, okay, now I know why I'm doing something. Now, what is the thing that I'm going to do? But the how, well, that's a whole other thing. Implementation, that's where people mostly fail.
Oh, so it's nasty. The implementation's nasty.
Oh, totally.
I'm hearing you loud and clear, but we can do it. That's the thing, because we're adaptive, right? One of the things I want to go deep with you on is if you can share a story of one of the fears you had and how you overcame it. How did you push through that? Because that's a lot of people love to hear those stories, because they go, yeah, I'm afraid of whatever, failing. I'm afraid of being embarrassed. I'm afraid of what those people out there, I don't know what they'll think of me. So what is something that you specifically did to overcome a specific fear? And it could be anything, like it might be something quite trivial or it might be something quite deep. So share a story with you moving through a fear.
Yeah, sure. So a couple really quick one comes to mind. One, I was afraid of what my parents would think. They're definitely more traditionally oriented as far as in terms of career. My mom's like a banking executive, and my dad's like a stockbroker in the business world, so there's some pressure to like perform on that level. And, going back to business school and sort of like dabbling in that world kind of made me, I was like checking it out, feeling it out. When I realized it wasn't for me, going back and rejecting that, especially after I'd sunk a whole bunch of money and time into it, right? That was a big deal. But don't fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy. You guys can look that up. But I was scared of my parents, right? I was scared, what would they think? And I just had to push through that. And of course, they're my parents. They're going to love whatever even if I'm in the gutter, they'll probably still love me. So that was one. The other one, I think, which is interesting, I think a lot of people can relate to, I was scared to death of social media, which is really interesting, right? Because I think this is the ultimate manifestation of putting your life out into the world. I just never post anything. And I was just like, really had this kind of not unhealthy, just scared, frankly, relationship with social media. And I just wouldn't use it because of it. And I remember the few times that I ever posted anything on Facebook for like the first, 8 or whatever years it was around, I was just like so scared of what people were saying about it. Like no one liked it. Just so the silliest stuff, but we all fall victim to it, right? But then I realized, like, as I wanted to start to build a business and dare I say a personal brand, or even just telling the world what I believe in, I had to come to terms with that relationship because it's an effective tool if you use it as such, right? And so I think that was a really good learning experience for me. I was just like, okay, you know what? I'm going to put it out in the world, whatever I'm thinking that day, and I'm just going to be okay with it. And I'm going to let it go. And so I turned off the phone, just let it happen, maybe come back to it the next day or even a couple of days later. And that just in a kind of funky way taught me how to be less fearful about what people think.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest learning point for me, is what people think was dominating my actions. And that's no bueno.
Yeah. Sounds to me like you're learning non-attachment to the outcome. Yeah. So you're getting out there, giving it a go, putting the phone aside, whatever. I don't care what happens. I've done it. I don't care what people think. And that is liberating. That liberation is the opposite of fear, right?
Exactly.
So fear is picking up the phone 3 seconds later to see if you've got your first like,
right,
or if someone's commented or whatever it might be. But that
Sure.
liberation of non-attachment.
Exactly. It's extremely liberating.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I can remember some of the fears I've moved through more on a practical level. So I used to have a fear of being underwater. So I went and faced that fear. I went and did scuba diving. I'm never going to scuba dive again, but I faced that fear. So sometimes it's the little things. You face some of the little practical fears. They build on your courage and your confidence to face the bigger fears. So I think if we can all start to, those people that are afraid of, following that inner calling, what their soul wants them to do, whether it be going for that next job, whether it be leaving the job, whether it be asking that person out, perhaps start with building your muscle of courage. Just find something small and give it a go. Like I just enrolled this week in and I shouldn't put this on my podcast because everyone's going to ask me how I'm going. So as a kid, I used to love playing on trampolines. We'd go away on holidays and play on trampolines. And I loved it, but I could never do any aerial backflips or anything like that. I was always on the mat, so to speak, with any tricks I did. And then I stopped, didn't do anything for years. And, I'm getting on now. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to face that fear of being able to do a feet-to-feet aerial backflip. So I got myself a personal coach, in my late 40s, and I rocked up to this gymnasium and said, I want you to teach me how to do an aerial backflip. And they all looked at me weird because everyone in there's like, there's all these little kids going to gymnastics and here's a grown woman go, teach me how to do a backflip.
Nice. I love it.
So it's just those little things. It's those little things that gives you the courage. And now just because I think, you know what? I'm just proving to myself that I'm adaptive. That I can adapt and that I can learn. Doesn't matter how old I am. Because a lot of people are going to go, why are you learning that at your age? Well, hang on a minute. Why not? Yeah,
exactly. No, show them. Yeah. And it's possible, like you said. And, it's funny. I did a podcast just a couple of weeks ago with a quote unquote fear expert. And she talked a lot about that, right? Like that even the most seemingly fearless people on the planet, fear doesn't go away. This is a deep-seated biological phenomenon that we are hard to have, right? Fear is not going anywhere. Don't try and get rid of it. Simply try and exercise it. Practice. Do what they call fear setting. Instead of goal setting, it's fear setting. You know, identify what type of fears you want to exercise and practice, and put that into build that into your life in one way or another. It's hugely valuable.
Yeah. And I think too, what people don't realize is once you face the fear and you do the thing that you've feared, and I love the quote, Joseph Campbell's quote, it's one of my favorites. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek.
Yes.
Right. So if you just face those fears, you'll actually find that you'll get past it and it'll become second nature to you. I remember my first public talk with a huge audience. I was scared. I was, there was fearful. I'd never done it before, but I mentally rehearsed it. I build the mental muscle internally first. But now I could get up and talk about anything in front of anyone. Doesn't matter. Well, maybe. Well, no, I reckon I could. I'd have to give it a go. But, huge crowds don't bother me anymore because I've faced that fear. I've used it as a fear goal. Okay, I'm going to get through that. Now it's not a fear. Yeah, and I think people that are wanting to do something different in their life, maybe just do exactly what you've said, Jeremy. Find a couple of things and face some fears, and you'll start to get the courage to go after the things that you want, take you from where you are now to where you really, really want to be. I'm saying want there because not where you should be, where you want to be.
You want to be. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. You nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me a little bit more around, you mentioned this really early on in our chat around flow. Now, for those of you, Jeremy and I actually met recently in the States, in Santa Cruz, where we're learning some stuff about flow. And I want to ask you, what's the importance and how does understanding flow fit into people moving from where they are now to where they want to be? How do you see the correlation with that, and potentially what's your understanding of flow?
Yeah, that's such an important and lovely question. Well, first of all, I think, when I say my why is, helping people follow what makes them feel alive, that to me is synonymous with finding flow, following flow. I think when I'm most alive is when I'm in flow. And I think I'm not alone. And so really my why is to help people and myself find flow. And so I think it's incredibly important. And that, I had a realization a few years ago that everything that I'd pursued with any type of rigor or deep interest was related, came back to pursuing flow on some level. So I had that epiphany, and it really made me interested in researching it and understanding it further. So I think for your question of like bridging this gap between where you are and where you want to be, I think most people where they are is not harnessing flow on a consistent basis. We're not trained to do it. We don't know how to do it. Instead, there are these, and certainly in my case, I'm probably yours, it's fleeting. Right, you have these little fleeting moments of truth, of beauty, of we can get into the neuroscience like we have in Santa Cruz. You get these neurochemicals pumping into your brain and producing these sensations. Well, that's not a coincidence. And so, but we just kind of like feel it. Oh wow, that was awesome. Give me a little more, but now it's gone. And that's pretty much it. Whereas now, I think we're understanding that we can actually harness these states and we can actually optimize our life for them, which is endlessly fascinating and certainly having a huge impact on my life, but also on the lives of the people I'm working with, because it's really, it opens up the floodgates. I think the more you can understand some of the flow triggers, some of the routines and flow stacking that can happen if you have a basic understanding of these concepts is really a game changer. So that's really my goal, is to help people with that.
So if we've got people listening who are hearing us talk about flow and they're going, what do you mean you're talking about going with the flow? I don't know what flow is. How would you describe it in your own words, what you would say this state of flow is? So people might be experiencing it, but might be calling it something else. So how would you describe it?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of people, it goes by a lot of different terms. I've heard, I used to call it in the zone, like the jazz scene, in the pocket. They often used to say that, peak state. So any type of I think the basic definition is just an optimal state of consciousness, or a non-ordinary state of consciousness where you feel and perform your best. And I think that's a pretty good way to summarize it. It's that feeling you have when time stands still. Yeah, without getting too esoteric, but the front of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, slows down, and literally your self-critic slows down and ceases to operate. So we have things like innovation and creativity and motivation, and these types of really desirable traits go through the roof because of the neurobiology. And so but to sum it up, it's just where you feel your best. That's really
I love what you say about the inner critic being turned off. So we were talking earlier about fear and the things that we're afraid of doing. If we can turn that inner critic off, it's going to stop telling us we're not good enough, we can't do it, it's too hard, or you don't have the education, you don't have the money, people are going to judge you. That all disappears. So for the work you're doing with people, helping them to create more periods and opportunities for flow in their life, are you finding that's helping them move through those fears at the same time?
100%. I think in my experience, not in isolation, because again, flow is a fleeting thing. I think there are ways to optimize it and to harness it. But I think generally speaking, not by itself, not in isolation, is that the way I'm approaching it at the current time. Now, if I get better at helping people harness flow more often, yes, absolutely. And to your point, that's the beauty, right? Like, that's the cool thing about flow, is that the prefrontal cortex is, that inner critic is gone for a while. And so, yes, that sweet spot of not judging ourselves, not being fearful, is gone temporarily. And that's a beautiful thing. So that is the beauty of flow, right? Like, that's precisely what enables us to perform our best as well, right? We're throwing ourselves down a mountain, these amazing athletes, and this is just one context, right? There's endless contexts this happens, but if you're throwing yourself down a mountain as a pro skier, you can't be scared. That risk challenge skills ratio kicks in, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, flow, prefrontal cortex gone, okay, I'm gonna do this. Otherwise, if you're just sitting on your couch and you're put in a same scenario where you're just immediately thrown on top of a mountain, it probably wouldn't happen, and you'd probably back off, right? It's about inducing those flow states, and gives us precisely the ability to rise to the challenge. That's what's so interesting about it. It's like this sort of catch-22 cyclical, I don't know, it's just really, really interesting.
Yeah, I love that too, that, the rising to the challenge. And when you're talking about, somebody getting off the couch, then going to the top of the mountain, never done it before, they probably would back off. And you took me to about 15 years ago in New Zealand. I decided with my partner at the time, we're going to do bungee jumping, right? And I walked up, I hadn't signed up for it or anything. I thought, I'm just going to go and see what this is like, so I did the walk up to the edge of the bridge where they jump off, and I put my head over and I went, no way. Yeah. There is no way I'm doing that. Whereas my partner, he just went and did it, right? But then fast forward a couple of years and I'm jumping out of airplanes. But the reason and here's the logical mind, and even the inner critic was still kicking in. I don't have to make the jump. There's somebody pushing me behind me, because I was doing a tandem. There's somebody with me to do it with me. So it was really quite interesting that facing the fear piece, when you're saying, you know, I'm the person on the couch who would not normally do that. And I get to the edge of one thing, I go, no way. But then I get to something else and I go, there's somebody with me. So just using that analogy, do you find that because it's almost like you're the tandem skydiver with somebody ready to face their fear, you're with them, do you find that having a coach or a mentor is helping people just push their limits a little further as well?
I do. I personally do. And from both ends of the spectrum, I've had a coach or I've had mentors that have helped me see past my own constraints. And that's the value of a coach at the end of the day, right? It's to ability, but also just helping you see what's possible when you don't see that possibility, right? Like that's I think the key value, at least that's what I try and do. And so, yes, definitely. I think it's really, really valuable to have someone walk through that process with you and help you break down barriers, because that's what we do ourselves. We're experts at putting up barriers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm finding myself doing that, but I love my inner critics now got this other part to it, which is not a critic anymore. It's going, come on, just move through it, sort of thing. So I think I've trained part of me to now push myself, just through little things. And it doesn't have to be massive. Everyone thinks we've got to make these massive changes, and I want to just harp back on that. Start small, I think, start with just one fear, one thing, move through that. And I think when you move through that struggle of that fear, you'll probably find you'll fall naturally into flow.
Oh, 100%. Couldn't agree more, Georgia. Start small and build from there.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question, because you've got so much wealth of knowledge and experience around, well, you're out there in big nature a lot as well, correct, with the work you do?
Yeah.
So what do you believe is the importance of connecting with nature on a regular basis? What's some of the things that's showing up for you personally, because you're out there, you know, in amongst Mother Nature?
Yeah, I think, well, it's just very simply, it's what resonates with me. I'm captivated by the natural world. I find a lot of beauty in it, and I seek it out. It brings me solace, peace. But I also think it brings a sense of humility too, right? Like I understand how small and relatively insignificant I am. And for some reason that brings me peace. And I'm come to terms with that. And I think that's maybe not for everyone, but I think for me in particular, when I'm out in big nature, I'm awe-inspired. It makes me feel it's tough. There's actually a juxtaposition as I think about it. Sometimes I just want to conquer nature. Right? Like sometimes I see a big mountain and I just want to, slay it, or I see a big wave or whatever, and I just want to own it or whatever. And so there's certainly that mentality. I would lie if I said otherwise, but I think more often than not, it's much more an appreciation. It's like, wow, that mountain is so majestic and huge. It just kicked my ass, or whatever, right? Like it's this humility that's built in, and it's just a grand appreciation. Yeah. I think we're just wired. I think we're meant to be wild, and I think building those experiences into my life just really brings me a lot of joy and fulfillment. And I think those are.
I love.
Hard to articulate sometimes.
Yeah, and you said something that I think is really important for people to understand, and that is, you said, "Hey, it may not be for everyone," and that's so true. And it's almost like that purple jacket metaphor we're talking about. We see someone like you getting out there in nature, big nature. I personally, same as you, it's awe-inspiring, and it actually induces flow for me, being in nature. So it may not be for everyone. You might be hearing us talking about it and going, well, yeah, maybe I should do that because they do it. I want their purple jacket. But what I'm going to suggest that listeners do is go and try the purple jacket on first before you purchase it. So go out and spend some time in big nature and see how it makes you feel. And you might be surprised that it's the missing piece.
Absolutely. I mean, I think as beings on this planet that evolved in big nature, I think most people will. It's in there somewhere, whether they're incredibly detached from it or not. But to your point, I think it goes back to, like, maybe it's not for you. It's okay if it's not. If that's not, or any other thing, XYZ thing is not for you. I think what's important, and actually the beauty of the human, experience, is that we should be aligning our lives to what we value. If you don't value big nature, I feel bad. I mean, I would argue with you. I think it's incredibly important beyond just the beauty of it, but that's okay, right? Like, do find what you value. Go out and see what that is. If that's purple coat, or it's an orange coat, or it's a yellow coat, or whatever it is, find what that is and follow it.
Yeah. So experiment and get curious with all these different things, and don't just think that the world that you've been handed on a silver platter from your parents, from society, from your friends, from your boss, is what you have to participate in. So start thinking about, well, let's get curious about something else. How can I increase my knowledge and get curious about, well, maybe I should get out in big nature. Maybe I should face a fear. Maybe I should get a coach. Try it. It's your life. Design it.
Yes, I love it.
You can't design it without doing a few lines and rubbing them out, because it doesn't work, right? That's the whole thing about design. The first iteration is never the final product. So you've got permission to get it and to try things on, and it doesn't fit, get rid of it. Don't waste your time on it. It's just, and you use the money that you may have spent trying something as part of your contribution towards your education. It's not a waste of money, it's money well spent, because you're defining who you are in your design along the way.
100%. And I love that. And I think you nailed it on the head. And that's design thinking at the end of the day, right? We design a product or a new framework or whatever it is, right? It takes iteration, right? It's testing, it's prototyping. And I think that's one thing really important that you nailed, is that people get so stressed out by if they try something and it doesn't work out, then they're screwed. That's it. Their life's over. Oh my God, the one thing I chose, heaven forbid, did not work out. Done. I'm useless. You might as well just throw me away. I'm like, what, completely meaningless. My identity's gone. Don't have that attitude. It takes a lot of the stress away once you do that and say, actually, I'm interested in like 4 or 5 really key things in my life. Try something in each of those areas. See what fits, like you said. And I also have to say, I love Georgia. Actually, when I first met you and had a significant conversation with you in Santa Cruz, that was one thing I really picked up on. And you said it, that it's a key part of your show, is curiosity. I think that is so beautiful and so important. And I definitely noticed that with you. And I love that you make that part of the show. Curiosity is so important, you guys. I think if you don't feel curious, just slow down, breathe, and try to open your eyes to the world. And I think you really actually find that there's a lot to be curious about. And I think when you're truly curious, I don't think you can be unhappy. I just don't think it's possible. When you're curious about things and stimuli is coming in, and every little thing, or at least most things, are pique your interest in one way or another, that's when you know you're feeling alive. That's when I know I come alive. I'll bet you're the same way.
Yeah. I was going to finish up and ask you, what advice do you have? But I think you've just nailed it right there. So I want to thank you so much for jumping on and having a conversation. We went down a number of rabbit holes, so to speak. And, we've covered fear, we've covered flow, we've We've covered, you know, finding your meaning and your wanting and your wants and your whys. And I think there's a lot of value in what you have to offer. So if people want to learn more about you, get in touch with you, maybe hook you up as a coach, what's the best way they can get in contact with you?
Great. Yeah, so most people can read more about what I do at my website. So it's Jeremy R. Jensen, JENSEN.com. You can email me at that same Jeremy at Jeremy R. Jensen. I'm on Instagram, same handle, Jeremy R. Jensen. Yeah, I'd love to get in touch. I love meeting new people, even if it's just for a conversation. If it's a more formal coaching arrangement, that's totally cool too. But yeah, I have a business, a couple of different businesses that are in this space that I'm happy to talk about, or I just like to help people. I mean, that's really at the end of the day. So, and that's all starts with a conversation. So I love talking to people.
So can you plug, because I remember us having a very quick conversation around your businesses and they sound awesome. So can you give us a quick couple of minute talk about your businesses and plug those businesses as well?
Okay, sure. Yeah. So my main business is called Out Wild. And in case you haven't gathered, I'm fairly outdoor and adventure oriented. So this space is really a unique space, outdoor adventure travel space. And I have a business called Out Wild, and our whole thing is intentional life design for the outdoor and adventure minded. So what we do is events, in-person events, multi-day events, and online content to help people align their lives to their values and live more intentionally, and specifically in the outdoor community. We're having a women's retreat here in June in the States, in New Hampshire. We've got another bigger event in Northern California in September. So that's a really fun business. And then I have a travel company, very, very much the same concept, intentional life design, but more long-term. So we do long-term travel, sabbaticals, remote work for people. We do 2-week, 1 month, and 4-month long trips to Latin America right now. So all with coaching built in, and life design concepts flow, all these sort of optimization concepts built into the curriculum, and then we go have a good time.
So who would be the ideal people for, I'm sitting here going, oh my God, there's so many people that would love to travel, feeling a bit stuck. Sounds like it's a perfect blend for those people, but are there a specific type of person that you find tends to jump on board these programs that you do?
Yeah, with travel programs, specifically Revive, we do, we find that folks that have been maybe in the workforce for a couple of years, and, you know, maybe none, I mean, it could be for anyone, young, old, whatever. But when you're out of undergrad, maybe you don't quite understand, you know, that, you know, you've been to work and maybe it wasn't the best fit, right? So I think we find people who are a little more thoughtful about where they're at, and they've had a little bit of experience under their belt. So like those people kind of late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, we see a lot of those folks, because this is a very much like a personal growth program. It isn't just like, let's go take Instagram pictures and get drunk. It's very much, let's go to Santiago, Chile, and travel to Patagonia and have coaches help us along the way to optimize our lives and build meaning and live intentionally, those types of things. So that's kind of the groups we usually get.
Yeah, awesome. It's making me want to be young again. But age is no limit. I understand.
A lot of our folks are in their 40s and 50s too. I mean, and people who just, whatever reason, are not content with where they're at. That's the type of people.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. Nailed it. Yeah. Look, thank you so much. What you're doing is amazing stuff in the world, and helping people really come alive and find their, I'm going to use the term bliss, but find that fulfillment. Because when I look around at the moment, and when I'm talking at events, there are so many people just caught in the grind. And and we're being bombarded constantly with these things telling us who we need to be, how we need to be, and what we need to do. And I think it's really brilliant. There's people like yourself who have the skills, who have walked the path before us, and can show us how to really, start to uncover what it is we want and then go after that with passion and purpose. So thank you so much for jumping in and sharing your insights and wisdom with our audience. Thank you so much.
Georgia, likewise. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I love the work you're doing as well. So keep it up, and thank you for putting this message out in the world.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for dropping by and listening to the conversation with Jeremy. So I really love what Jeremy's doing, and I highly recommend that you jump on board. If you're feeling a little bit stuck, look up his programs and get yourself on one of the travel adventures, and just remove yourself from the life and have some new experiences, but at the same time get some really valuable coaching from somebody who really knows his stuff. So I really encourage you to go and face your fears, as Jeremy says. Experiment and get curious about big nature, and start questioning the things that you want and why you want them. Are there things that you're wanting that really they're not your wants, they're somebody else's? So just some questions for you to think about. So thank you again for dropping in. And as always, remember, please stay curious about life and stay curious about you and what you want from life. Bye for now.
Today is turning into the most curious adventure I've ever had.